You are listening to the Hero's Journey podcast. I'm Dan Zarzana.
Junior? We named the dog Dan Zarzana. That didn't sound like him at all.
And it begins.
No, let's take that again.
Nope.
Oh,
we're not taking that again.
It was the worst Sean
go.
Connery I've ever done.
And that's what the people are here for. You are Jeff Garvin. Let the journey begin.
Hello and welcome to the Hero's Journey podcast, where we discuss your favorite stories through the lens of Joseph Campbell's classic monomyth from his opus, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and Christopher Vogler's modern adaptation from his book, The Writer's Journey.
We recognize Father's Day in June in the United States, so this June episode, we're taking a look at movie dads. There were more options than I expected. And we are sorry if some of your favorite movie dads are not represented on the poll. There were some suggestions made to us after the fact that were very good. But tough choices had to be made. Here is how our movie dads poll worked out in honor of Father's Day. In third place, with 25% of the vote, was the 1993 comedy Mr. Mom, starring Michael Keaton. Second place went to the 1991 Steve Martin comedy Father of the Bride, and the winner, in less of a landslide than I expected, with 44% of the vote, is Steven Spielberg's 1989 action-adventure Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was released on May 24th, 1989, on a $48 million budget, and grossed more than $474 million worldwide, making it the most successful Indiana Jones film at that time. 19 years later, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull
Stop it.
surpassed the Last Crusade box office take by almost double.
It did. It made almost $800 million.
It remains to be seen what this summer's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny will do.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade stars Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, a role he has now played 6 times with the release of Dial of Destiny at the end of this month.
He belongs in a museum.
Now, so do you. I'm guessing because you did not balk at my statement there 6 times when there are 5 films. You must know what the 6th appearance was.
It's niggling in the back of my mind, but if you put a gun to my head, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
In the 90s, there was a TV series on ABC called, at the time, it was called The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Yes, with Sean Patrick Flanery.
Yes, and now it's on Disney Plus, and it's called The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones, so I'm not sure why they changed the title. But anyway, in one of those episodes of that series, Harrison Ford did appear as a 50-year-old bearded Indiana Jones living in Wyoming. Bearded because he was in the middle or about to shoot The Fugitive, in which he sports a beard as Dr. Richard Kimball. Sean Connery stars as Indiana Jones's father, Dr. Henry Jones Sr.
We named the dog Dr. Henry Jones Sr.
God. The film also stars Alison Doody as Dr. Elsa Schneider, Julian Glover as Walter Donovan, Michael Byrne as Colonel Vogel, and River Phoenix as young Indy. Denholm Elliott and John Rhys Davies reprised their Raiders of the Lost Ark roles of Marcus Brody and Sala, respectively.
The film was written by Jeffrey Boehm and Menno Myas, receiving story by credit. The legendary John Williams returns to compose another rousing score for which he was nominated for an Academy Award. This was just one of 2 Best Original Scores Williams was up for during the 1990 Academy Awards ceremony. He was also nominated for his score for the Oliver Stone film Born on the 4th of July. Williams lost both of them to Alan Menken's The Little Mermaid, and rightfully so, in my opinion.
Oh, wow.
Rehashing an old Indiana Jones theme or changing music forever? You decide. The sound team of Ben Burt, Gary Summers, Sean Murphy, and Tony Daw were nominated for a Best Sound Oscar, but lost to Civil War drama Glory. Ben Burt did win an Oscar, along with Richard Hims, for Best Sound Effects Editing.
Okay, Jeff, are we ready for this? Dust off your fedora, pack your Grail Diary, and if you saw this film in the theater, call your doctor to schedule a colonoscopy. This is the hero's journey of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
The Ordinary World is the beginning of Act 1, where we see our main character in their status quo normal life. Dan, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is my favorite Indiana Jones movie. I like it more than Raiders of the Lost Ark. I know that's controversial for film students, but I love this movie, and the prologue is maybe the best prologue in any film we've ever covered.
It's so fun. It sets a wonderful tone.
And it's half my notes, so just prepare thyself. We're in Utah. It's 1912, 24 years before the events of Raiders of the Lost Ark, 23 before Temple of Doom, which is technically a prequel. We see a group of boys on horseback riding through the desert. They're Boy Scouts, which was incorporated in 1910 and formed its first official scouting unit that same year in Utah. They stop at a rock formation to explore, and two boys in particular, a large boy named Herman and another boy yet unnamed, enter a cave and stumble upon this group of rough-looking men. And some of them appear to be digging for treasure, and they're supervised by this tall, be-leather-jacketed scoundrel in a fedora. Mm-hmm. And we see him from behind. And could this be Indiana Jones? And his men bring him a wooden box, which he opens, and he pulls out this ornate golden cross on a chain. And then the scoundrel lifts his head to look at the cross. The brim of his fedora reveals a very rough, stubbled face, but it's not Indiana Jones. Now, when I first saw this movie, I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I was like, why is Indiana Jones using a group of guys to dig for him? He works alone. And I totally bought it.
They recast Indiana Jones.
Well,
what?
No,
what is this movie?
I just thought it was, what a great twist.
Yes, it was a good reveal. Because at the time, I wasn't paying attention to the math. Like we were 12 when this movie came out? I was
13 as of 2 days prior.
You had just turned 13. So
That's right.
I was still 12 and very, very stupid. So when I'm watching this movie and I'm seeing, I'm not paying attention, 1912, that can't be Indiana Jones because we see him during the 30s as an adult. So this can't be him. I wasn't paying attention to that at all. I was just like, what? Who is this guy? What?
Yeah.
Bought it like you did. I bought
absolutely. It. So we cut back to the boys. And the big one calls the smaller one Indy. Mm-hmm. What are they doing? Indiana. And we see for the first time young Indiana Jones, played brilliantly by the late and much missed River Phoenix, whose Harrison Ford impression is stunning.
He did a fantastic job.
Everything about him. I mean,
the smirk.
Yes.
Is so Harrison Ford. It's amazing.
He tells us that's the Cross of Coronado, given to him by Cortez in 1520, and it belongs in a museum. After nonchalantly removing a snake from Herman's lap, apparently he has not developed his fear of snakes yet, Indy tells him, go get the scoutmaster and the sheriff. And then he sneaks down and grabs the cross while the other men are looking away. As he's climbing up the rope to get back out of the chamber, he steps on a beam and it cracks, alerting the men, and Indy takes off and the men follow. And what ensues is a fantastic chase on horseback, car, and then finally a circus train. I could spend an hour on this chase because I remember watching this going, how are they going to build from here? How are they going to get better than what we've just seen? The first 20 minutes of this movie is a constant chase. We see the origin of Indy's ophidiophobia when he falls into a crate of snakes.
Right.
We witness him getting the signature scar when he uses a bullwhip for the first time to scare off a hungry lion.
Mm-hmm.
They chase him all the way home, where he bursts through the front door and into his father's office, and he's trying to get the attention of his father. His back is to the camera. I'm sure everyone knew Sean Connery was playing him by the time they saw the movie, but it's awesome that we don't see Sean Connery yet.
Yeah.
But he calls him Junior and tells him to count to 10 in Greek. Absolutely infuriating. Here he is with an emergency, and his dad's like, count to 10. We see Professor Henry Jones drawing something in an old-looking diary. Indy hears a car pulling up, backs out of the room, and there's the sheriff. So the sheriff comes in, and he tells Indy the rightful owner of that cross is the man that Indy took it from. And we see through a window, very important shot, of a man in a Panama hat and a tan suit with a red carnation on his lapel, limping into frame with his cane. It's like, Everyone, remember the limping guy with the hat and the red card? Like, attention. The sheriff takes the cross from Indy and hands it to the scoundrel with the fedora. And by the way, he's credited as Fedora. And he hands it off to one of his men who turns and brings it to Panama Hat, who is credited as Panama Hat.
I have a tidbit about Fedora Hat Man.
Oh.
Later. So check out our bonus audio content if you're a patron of this podcast.
The scoundrel steps forward and says, with a little smile, says this to Indy.
You lost today, kid. But it doesn't mean you have to like it.
And he takes off his fedora and puts it on Indy's head. And then in an incredible transition, just a simple cut, Indy tilts his head up, cut to present day. Indy on the deck of a ship in a terrible storm. This is the Indy we know and love. Archaeology professor and weekend treasure hunter. He's taken the Cross of Coronado back from Panama Hat after all these years, but now he's cornered.
This is the second time I've had to reclaim my property from you.
That belongs in a museum.
So do you. Throw him over the side.
And he manages barely to escape from this storm-tossed ship with the cross, leaving Panama Hat to die.
Yeah, as the ship explodes.
Okay, 20 minutes into the podcast, back at the University of Old Stuff.
Hold on.
Oh.
Hold on.
Yeah.
As the ship is sinking, we see the name of the ship is Coronado.
Yeah.
So my thought is, was Panama Hat a real descendant of Coronado?
Oh.
And therefore the rightful owner, as the descendant of Coronado, of the cross, and has Indy made a terrible, terrible mistake? Or is the guy just so obsessed, like Henry Sr. is with the Grail, is this guy so obsessed with Coronado and Coronado's cross that he named his boat the Coronado? I don't know.
I have seen this movie a dozen times or more and never, ever thought of that. But yes, I'd like your explanation much better that Indy robbed it from...
So he's committed a dozen murders already and theft of ancestral property.
So back at the University of Old Stuff in New York, he gives the cross to Marcus for the museum. And then to avoid the mob of students waiting for his attention because it's office hours, he climbs out the window in his suit wearing his fedora. That is where we leave our world of common day.
During class, Indy says, archaeology is the search for fact, not truth. Forget any notions you have about lost cities, exotic travel, digging up the world. We don't follow maps to buried treasure, and X never, ever marks the spot, setting up a fantastic joke later on. Indy enters for his office hours. The lobby of his office is just jammed with students that are screaming at him, and his secretary hands him his mail. And before Indy dips out of his office by climbing out the window, he throws his mail onto the desk and then picks up a package. It's like a brown wrapped paper package. And he says, Venice, Italy, looking at the return address, and then sticks it in his pocket. So that's important for later.
Yes.
It's such a great world of common day. It's just, it's like a James Bond movie where you see the end of Indy's previous adventure before we get into the adventure of this film.
Yeah, the backstory, the completion of the thing. It's great.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this. We probably discussed this during Raiders of the Lost Ark episode, but it bears repeating. Steven Spielberg was desperate to do a James Bond film.
Yes.
He really wanted to direct an actual James Bond film. Oh. But the producer of the James Bond films at that time, Albert Broccoli, was adamant that only British directors would direct James Bond films. And so Spielberg was out. So he made Raiders of the Lost Ark instead. Now we have Indiana Jones.
I think he chose wisely.
The call to adventure. The hero is presented with a challenge which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. As Indy is attempting to dash across the university lawn to escape his responsibilities as a professor, he is abducted, sort of? He's approached by three men in suits who surround him. They make it very clear that he does not have an option. He must go with them.
He is voluntold to get into that car.
Voluntold, absolutely. Cut to Indy in an impressive penthouse flat, artifacts all over the place, and Indy is smiling when he's looking around this place. He's like, wow, this is a swanky joint. This is the home of Walter Donovan.
My men didn't alarm you, I hope. My name is Donovan, Walter Donovan.
I know who you are, Mr. Donovan. Your contributions to the museum over the years have been extremely generous. Some of the pieces in your collection here are very impressive.
Well, like yourself, Dr. Jones, I have a passion for antiquities.
Donovan, by the way, is played by Julian Glover. He reveals an ancient and damaged sandstone tablet, which seems to give instructions to the location of the Holy Grail. And the two men, Donovan and Indiana Jones, share mythologies. The Grail's real existence. It was the cup that Christ drank from at the Last Supper, and it was the cup that caught his blood during the crucifixion, and 3 knights of the First Crusade found it.
I've heard this one as well. 2 of these brothers walked out of the desert 150 years after having found the Grail and began the long journey back to France, but only one of them made it. And before dying of extreme old age, he supposedly imparted his tale to a Franciscan friar, I think.
Not supposedly, Dr. Jones. This is the manuscript in which the friar chronicled the knight's story.
To this beautiful old book that Walter Donovan also is in possession of, and gives clues to the location of the Holy Grail. The sandstone tablet is one of 2 markers. The other is, do we know at this time that it's a shield? He just says the second marker is somewhere in Venice, Italy, according to my project leader, but...
We've hit a snag. Our project leader has vanished, along with all his research. We received a cable from his colleague, Dr. Schneider, who has no idea of his whereabouts or what's become of him. I want you to pick up the trail where he left off. Find the man, and you will find the Grail.
This is a masterclass in how to write exposition. This scene is dense with dialogue, and you follow it all because there's artifacts to look at, and the setting is amazing. It's incredible. That brings us to refusal of the call. Confronted with fear of the unknown, our hero refuses to engage in the adventure. Sometimes this energy is expressed from within, sometimes from without. Indy's refusal is pretty classic here. First, he rejects the validity of the Holy Grail quest. I've heard this bedtime story before.
Right.
Then he discounts the clues on the tablet as vague. Then Donovan tells him the story of the 3 knights who guarded the Grail and how they found the manuscript that's led them almost to the grave of the first knight. And when Indy can't refute the evidence anymore, he resorts to the classic, I'm not the right guy for this, when he says,
You've got the wrong Jones, Mr. Donovan. Why don't you try my father?
That's what I saw as the key refusal, is those classic elements.
Okay, so the second half of Walter Donovan's statement there is part of the meeting with the mentor versus supernatural aid for you?
Which?
We already have. Your father is the man who's disappeared.
Oh, I saw all that as part of Call to the Adventure.
Yes, and it's the revelation that his father is the man who has disappeared is what makes Indy can no longer live in the comfort of the ordinary world. His father has vanished. Now I've got to go find my dad. And that is very important because that is his goal throughout the beginning of Act 2. The next segment is Supernatural Aid, or Meeting with the Mentor. The hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. Marcus, played by Denholm Elliott, and Indy visit Henry Sr.'s home and find that it has been ransacked.
Oh boy.
Brody finds the mail, sees that it's been opened, and the mention of mail triggers Indy to remember that he's got mail in his pocket from Venice, Italy, where Donovan said Indy's father disappeared. So, clue. So he pulls out the package, unwraps it, and it is his father's Grail Diary.
Every clue he followed, every discovery he made, complete record of his search for the Holy Grail. This is his whole life. Why would he have sent this to me?
And then Indy looks at 2 paintings that are hanging on the wall of this ransacked study.
Yeah.
One is a 13th century painting of the crucifixion with a figure capturing the blood of Christ in a goblet. The second is a painting of a knight walking across mid-air over a chasm reaching out toward a levitating Grail. And he asks Marcus, do you believe that the Grail actually exists? And Marcus responds in a callback to what Indy said earlier in class. He tells his students, we cannot afford to take mythology at face value. Marcus says, the search for the cup of Christ is the search for the divine in all of us. But if you want facts, Indy, I have none to give you. At my age, I'm prepared to take a few things on faith. Until I did this analysis, that dialogue, I'd never paid much attention to it. Now I'm like, wow.
Yeah, no, I had the same experience. And as I'm watching that, I paused it and I went, oh my God, this whole idea of faith and proving your faith is a theme in almost every Lucasfilm project, from Star Wars to Willow to, everything.
The Grail Diary, that is the supernatural aid that leads Indy and Henry and all of his group of allies through the rest of the adventure.
Crossing of the threshold. The hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world. This crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. Indiana looks up at Marcus Brody and says, tell Donovan I'll take that ticket to Venice now. And Brody says, I'll tell him we'll take 2.
At this point, I was like, yes, Marcus is going with him. Because he got left behind in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's right. So they get on a plane, and we get the classic old red line on the map as they leave New York. They stop for fuel and poutine in Newfoundland. And then they stop in the Azores, the islands in the Atlantic, and then Lisbon, and finally Venice. That sort of overlay montage with that map is so classic. And I loved watching it going, oh, what a brilliant way to fade us out of Act 1 and into Act 2.
And I like during the travel montage, cross-faded with the map, we see Indy reading the Grail Diary.
Yes.
Throughout this journey.
He's studying up. Well, that takes us to the end of Act 1. I need a refill.
Oh, wait. No, something very important. When Indy and Brody are exiting Walter Donovan's car that has dropped him off at the airstrip, Walter Donovan says, be very careful, Dr. Jones. Don't trust anybody.
Yes. Good point.
Big
Payback.
moment. Okay, now we are done with Act 1.
I need a coffee refill.
Me too.
Let's head over to the Campbell Cafe.
Welcome to the side quest at the Campbell Cafe. Jeff and I take a break from our current journey, pour a cup of joe, and discuss other quests we've undertaken recently. Jeff, what have you been up to since our last episode? I know that you have been up to a lot because I have been following your Insta. I'm curious to know what single thing you are going to choose to talk about.
I had a whole different thing prepared, and then Friday night, I took my son to see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Holy crap. You haven't seen it yet, right, Dan?
No, I have not.
I won't spoil anything, but I went into it thinking, well, of course they had to make a second one after Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but there's no way they're going to equal how shocking and different and surprising. Dan, they did it. This is the Empire Strikes Back of Spider-Man movies.
Oh, wow.
My jaw literally dropped multiple times during this film. The art is incredible. The story is incredible. The characters are deep and you care about them. Every superhero story has its cliches and its weak points where you just kind of have to suspend your disbelief. This movie turns all of it on its head. It is spectacular and deep. I only give 5-star ratings to my favorite film. So it has to be an impeccable movie, but it also has to be in my favorites. I could not find a reason not to give this film 5 stars. I was like, there's no way I'm giving it's not that I don't like Spider-Man. It's just never been, like, the Spider-Man mythology has never gripped me the way X-Men did or the way Batman did. And watching this movie, I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine being a kid and this being my first Spider-Man experience. So if you are listening to this podcast right now, push stop, drive to a theater, and go see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It is spectacular.
Well, that's great. That's wonderful to hear. I have heard that same sentiment from multiple people, and I'm disappointed with myself at not having seen it yet.
Me too, Dan. I'm disappointed in you. So what non-Spider-Verse movie did you see or thing did you read?
I teased last episode, unless I cut it. I don't think I cut it. Anyway, I said that, I feel bad about not talking about reading First Blood.
Yeah, you did tease that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I did that, but that was last month that I had read First Blood. First Blood is the debut novel of author David Morrell. It's the novel upon which the Sylvester Stallone first Rambo movie was based, also titled First Blood. Since reading the book, I have been making my way through the Rambo movie series, much like I did with the Predator series after we did our Predator episode. Have you spent much time watching the Rambo movies?
I've never seen First Blood. I've never seen any of that.
Never seen a Rambo movie. Okay. It is so fascinating to watch a series that spans the number of years, decades that the Rambo movies do. There are 5. The first one was in...
Wow, I didn't even know there were 5.
82. Anyway, that is a story about a Vietnam veteran with PTSD. He is just drifting around and he gets run out of town by a bully sheriff and he reacts badly to it. All he wanted was to find a diner, get a meal, and then he was going to keep moving on. But this cop decided to antagonize him, and so, you started the war, I'm going to finish it. You drew first blood, not me. That was the first movie. If you look at the violence count of the Rambo films, there is a spoiler for 1982's Rambo coming up right now in 3, 2, 1. There is 1 death in Rambo, in the first Rambo movie, First Blood. 1, and it's an accident.
Wow.
By the time you get to Rambo 4, which is just called Rambo, that one came out in 2008, he kills hundreds violently. It is very, very gory. It is such a departure. It's so interesting to watch a film like First Blood and see how that film, that series, evolves over time. And the filmmaking, the style of filmmaking evolves. The novel First Blood by David Morrell is very violent. There's a huge body count in that. But Stallone thought that was too much. He wanted to tone it down. And so the result is the film, he kills 1 deputy accidentally. Juxtapose that with 2008 when he's just annihilating an entire Burmese army of soldiers so violently. It's even more violent than the first novel is. It's just incredible to watch something like that happen.
Wow.
The way it moves. It's like the Fast and Furious movies. I think I've talked about those before too. Like the first movie is like a racing heist film and they're stealing VCRs out of freight trucks. And in Fast and Furious 9, there's like cars in space. Yes. It's just the way it happens is so incredible. It's amazing. Anyway, that was my side quest. I'm going to watch Rambo Last Blood maybe today or tomorrow to round it out. And then that'll be the end of it.
I'm adding First Blood to my letterbox right now.
Well, let me know what you think of it when you see it.
Well, I'm about halfway through my second cup of coffee. Figure I'll finish it right about the time it's time for the beverage break. So let's make our way back to Studios G and Z.
Act 2 of the hero's journey begins with the Road of Trials, or as Christopher Vogler calls it, tests, allies, and enemies. Having crossed the first threshold, the hero meets allies, makes enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove their worthiness. Okay, so allies, we've got Henry Sr., played by Sean Connery. We've got Sala, played by John Rhys Davies. And we've got Marcus Brody, played by Denholm Elliott. That's pretty much it. There are shapeshifters, Walter Donovan and Dr. Schneider, and Kazim, actually, who starts as an enemy but becomes an ally. Donovan and Schneider are allies but become enemies.
So much double crossing.
Enemies from the start are Colonel Vogel and all of his soldiers. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that Vogel is a bad guy.
Right.
He's a Nazi. Remember when Nazis used to be bad? When everybody uniformly hated Nazis, Jeff?
Oh man. You went there.
Now we've got members of Congress defending them.
Oh.
Okay, test number 1. Navigating Venice and finding Dr. Schneider. They step off the water taxi, and Brody says,
How will we recognize this Dr. Schneider when we see him?
I don't know. Maybe he'll know us.
Sexism wins, as Brody and Indy are assuming Schneider will be a man. Schneider is actually played by a 21-year-old Allison Doody. She recognizes Indy.
I knew it was you. You have your father's eyes.
And in Indy's James Bondian response, and my mother's ears, but the rest belongs to you. Right out of the gate, Indy is just going for it.
Yeah.
And Elsa, I love this line.
Looks like the best parts have already been spoken for.
I just have to say,
great response.
When I read that she was 21 when she did this role, I was flummoxed because she has such a bearing. You totally buy that she's a PhD, and she's just got this presence that belies her age.
Yes, I don't want to fawn over Lauren Bacall 2 episodes in a row.
Too late.
But she was 19 in To Have and Have Not. If you didn't know that, you would assume she was in her mid-20s. She also has a presence about her.
Yes, and the voice.
Test 2, finding the knight's tomb in Venice. So Elsa reveals that she and Henry Sr. were in the library when he vanished. All that was left was a scrap of paper with Roman numerals written on it. So she escorts them to the library, which Indy says doesn't look much like a library. It looks like a converted church. Actually, I think that was Brody who says that. And I just want to point out, there's a lot of comedy in this film. Way more than even in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Because they were trying to overcompensate for how dark the Temple of Doom was.
Yes.
All right, so the trio enter the library. Elsa says the library's about to close, and she's going to go arrange for them to stay longer. And while she's gone, they notice a stained glass window that has the 3 Roman numerals on it.
Right.
Indy says, I've seen this window before, and he flips to the Grail Diary. And I think it's the image that Henry Sr. was drawing at the beginning when he says, may he who illuminated this illuminate me. They're like, okay, so here's the source of the Roman numerals, but Indy says, I don't know why Dad sent this to me, mailed the diary to me, so until we know what we're dealing with, let's keep this to ourselves.
Yeah.
Here's where they've got a really great joke. They see the source of the Roman numerals. So there's 3, 7, and 10 on the window. And there's columns in the library. One of them's got a 3, one of them's got a 7. And then he's like, look around for the 10, look around for the 10. And then he like climbs this staircase and looks down at the floor. What's the Roman numeral for 10?
X marks the spot.
X marks the spot. There it is. Giant X on the floor. Great reveal.
Nice callback.
They break open the floor, climb inside into the catacombs, and instead of water, Indy notices that it's petroleum, the liquid that's down there. He and Elsa go exploring, looking for the tomb, and there's a really great callback to Raiders of the Lost Ark where they're walking along, looking at the wall, and they see a drawing, I guess, an image of the Ark of the Covenant.
What's this one?
The Ark of the Covenant.
Are you sure?
Pretty sure.
And John Williams inserts his Ark of the Covenant leitmotif into the score. It's so good. So good. Okay, so up top, Marcus Brody is keeping watch, but we see some sinister-looking individuals sneak up behind him and knock him out. Indy and Elsa have located the knight's tomb. There's rats all over the place.
I gotta interrupt.
What?
As I'm watching this. So on No Games for Old Men, the YouTube channel that Dan created that I participate in, Dan just finished a playthrough of a game called A Plague Tale: Innocence, and rats play a huge part in this game. And so when this sequence started, like, oh my God, the rats, like there's a rat thing. And then when Indy stops and grabs he grabs the femur of a skeleton and like yanks. Maybe he expected it to like pop off, but it sort of like half drags the whole skeleton and it like plops into it. And I thought, oh, he's crafting. You know, he's got one bone, one claw.
Crafting.
But he's crafting an item. I love that.
One bone, one cloth, one petroleum, and that makes a torch.
Yep, that's right.
That's how video games work, guys. Okay, so they find the knight's tomb. push the lid off the sarcophagus. Inside is the remains of Sir Richard, the one who made it out of the desert hundreds of years ago and told the story of the Grail to the Franciscan friar. And his shield is the same image as the sandstone tablet. Now, the sandstone tablet, the top half was missing.
Yeah.
Now, Indy is able to take a rubbing that he had made of the sandstone, put it on top of the shield. It matches. He takes his chalk or charcoal and finishes the image.
Yeah.
As the sinister figures that knocked out Brody drop a match into the catacombs, igniting all of the petroleum, trying to incinerate Indy and Dr. Schneider. Indy finds a way out, and they escape into the streets of Venice via a manhole cover that's in the middle of a cafe that startles a bunch of elderly tourists, perhaps.
Yeah, because they're like, wait, there's no manholes in Venice. It's just water. Why do they smell like petroleum and
Where
rats?
would they come from? Right, yes. So that's a pass test.
Yeah.
Long test.
Spielberg puts together these incredible sequences. When I'm watching this movie, I'm stunned at the screenwriting of the Indiana Jones films. This in particular is so great. When you write a film like this, you have to know where it begins and where it ends, and then you have to put the pieces together. But I'm envious because it's like, well, what are the next 25 pages going to be? A chase. It's a boat chase. Oh, got it. Okay. Yeah. So now you just get to write a really fun boat chase.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that kind of thing is actually on the page, or is it just Indy and Dr. Schneider are pursued by armed men through the canals of Venice on a boat? The dialogue, of course, has to be written, but the events...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Spielberg gets in there with the screenwriters and probably storyboards it as they're writing the sequence, because it doesn't make much sense if you're not going to map that out visually, right? I mean, a chase scene is all adrenaline and visuals.
So what we are talking about is the boat chase that immediately follows as Indy and Dr. Schneider are pursued by the men that dropped the match into the catacombs in the library. Indy defeats all of the pursuers and is in a fist fight with the last one, who's presumably their leader. And that man reveals that he is a member of the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword, an organization devoted to protecting the secret location of the Holy Grail.
Right.
When Indy reveals, I'm not interested in the Grail, I'm only here to find my father, Kazim shapeshifts and becomes an ally and says, in that case, your father is being held in the castle of Brunwald on the Austrian-German border. Past test. We now have another clue, another destination, and now the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword know that Indiana Jones is not a threat, and they stop attacking him.
Yeah.
The next test is deciphering the clues revealed by the rubbing on the marker. Yeah. So now we've got Indiana Jones and Brody in the apartment in Venice that Walter Donovan has provided for them.
He knew there was a city with an oasis due east. Here, he knew the course turned south through the desert to a river, and the river led into the mountains here, straight to the canyon. He knew everything, except where to begin, the name of the city.
Alexandretta. Now we know.
Yes, now we know.
Indy reveals that the Knights of the Crusade laid siege to Alexandretta. The present city of Iskenderun in Turkey is built on its ruins. So now they know where to start.
Right.
Another pass. So Indy orders Marcus to get in touch with Sala and meet him in Iskenderun, while Indy is going to go to the castle of Brunwald to try to rescue Henry Sr.
Always split the party.
Right. Now, Indy returns to his room and finds it ransacked. He then goes to Elsa's room, and here she's got her record player on very loudly. He enters her room. It is also ransacked, but she was in the bathroom taking a bath listening to loud music, so she presumably didn't hear any of it, because she is surprised when she comes out of the room. She's like, my room, what were they looking for? And Indy pulls the diary out of his pocket. And she says, you didn't trust me. They then get into an argument that, in a very James Bondian way, results in coitus.
Yeah.
We'll say. Indy forces himself on Elsa. I've never really paid much attention to that moment before. but they're sparring, arguing about, you didn't trust me and I didn't know you, and you're mad now, but I'll just steal another flower tomorrow and give it to you and you'll be fine with it. And then that pisses her off, and then he just like lays a kiss on her and she's like, how dare you kiss me? And then they kiss back and forth until they end up on the bed together.
Yeah.
Watching that now, I was like, that's a bad Indy there. Bad boy Indy doing that. Maybe Elsa was giving off enough signals that he knew she'd be okay with it.
I think there's especially in these adventure movies where there's a hyper-masculine hero, there's this fantasy of consent is somehow implied, right? Because she pulls away and says, and then she goes and kisses him and bites his ear. And I love the lines, the dialogue is great. He says, I don't like fast women. It's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You grabbed her and kissed her. But the fact that she didn't resist, you're a fast woman. And she says, and I hate arrogant men. Yeah. And of course,
as
he loves
chewing
fast
on
women,
his ear.
And she loves arrogant men. And that's the match.
That's the end of the Road of Trials for me.
So that leads us to approach to the inmost cave, where the hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of their quest is hidden. Dan, you and I had the same end of tests.
I'm shocked.
I am shocked too, but I'm pretty sure I shanked the line between approach and ordeal. So we'll have to see how we meet up there. Rescuing Henry is the approach. They fly to Austria and enter the Brunwald Castle. This is Indy and Elsa. Indy borrows her beret and pretends to be a Scottish lord come to look at the tapestries.
Tapestries? Dear me, the man is dense. This is a castle, isn't it? There are tapestries.
This is a castle, and we have many tapestries. And if you are a Scottish lord, then
I am Mickey Mouse.
Here's the missed opportunity. There's no explanation for why Indiana Jones's father is Scottish, and this was a perfect opportunity for Harrison Ford to rock a Sean Connery impression, and he didn't. And I will never understand why he wouldn't go, I've come to look at the tapestries.
I'm going to guess that he couldn't. He was not confident in doing a passable Sean Connery accent, so he went with cartoony Scottish.
Okay, so the butler doesn't buy it, so he has to knock out the butler. They make their way through the castle. Indy parks Elsa in this room while he climbs out the window and swings across from one to the other and climbs in the window where his dad is. He finds his father. And there's this great moment where Henry thinks he's a bad guy and picks up this vase and cracks him over the head with it, and then looks at the vase, realizes it might be something valuable, rushes to the lamp to examine it, and as Indy's recovering from the blow to the head, he says, "I'll never forgive myself." And he goes, "Oh, it's okay, Dad." And he's like, "No, it's fake." Cares more about the vase.
It's such a great introduction to Henry.
It is.
But you get to see James Bond be this kind of bumbling, I guess, sort of. Like he's not.
He's a nerd.
There's no gravitas. Yeah, he's absolutely a nerd. He's a professor of medieval literature, the one the students hope they don't get.
This is my favorite performance by Sean Connery that I've ever seen. This movie. It shows off his range as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they plan their escape and they're about to leave the room when Nazis barge in and hold them at gunpoint. They demand the diary, and Henry says, "You don't think my son would bring it here?" And
that's stupid.
Yeah. And then Indy kind of looks at him like, and you didn't really. So then they get in this argument about it. This classic
mailed it to the Marx Brothers.
Yes. So Indy uses the argument as a cover to grab one of the guys and get his machine gun. And
can we discuss this later? I should have mailed it to the Marx Brothers. Will you take it easy? Take it easy? Why do you think I sent it home in the first place? So it wouldn't fall into their hands. I came here to save you. Oh, yeah? And who's going to come to save you, Junior? I told you. Don't call me Junior.
Just murders these Nazis that have come in. And
look what you did.
Henry's like, oh my God.
I can't believe what you did.
I can't can't believe what you did.
I mean, and if you think about it, you go to rescue your dad and you immediately murder 4 people with a machine gun. That's a shocking moment to a professor, you know? He's never seen this. He's never witnessed this side of Indy.
Yeah.
They start to escape through the castle only to come upon Colonel Vogel, also making his second appearance on the Hero's Journey podcast.
Nani?
He's in Braveheart. He's the mean, face-licking English soldier.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Those piercing blue eyes.
I recognize the eyes now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he's the one who attacks.
He attacks Marin. He rapes Marin.
Yeah, and kicks off all.
Yeah.
Wow, Michael Byrne, way to go, dude.
He's just a presence on screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so Vogel has a gun to Elsa's head, and Henry tries to warn him. She's with them. She's one of them, and he doesn't believe his dad because he's been seduced by Elsa.
Yep.
So he throws down his machine gun, and Vogel pushes Elsa toward him, and he sort of catches her in his arms, and she says, "I'm sorry." And then she pulls the diary out of his pocket and backs away with a smile on her face and says, "You should have listened to your father." So now they've lost the Grail.
Betrayal.
He's been betrayed. But I still see this as approach. There's a couple more pieces of approach here. So they take these Joneses into this large like dining room with a fireplace in the castle. And Indy says, she ransacked her own room and I fell for it. And then he says to his dad, "How did you know she was a Nazi?"
How did you know she was a Nazi? She talks in her sleep.
What? Oops. Not only did she sleep with Indy, who's twice her age, she slept with, you're old enough to be her grandfather. There's another reveal to be made, which is Donovan re-enters the film in a classic sitting with his back to the camera in a winged armchair before the fireplace reveal.
Yes.
He stands up. He's been working with the Nazis the whole time.
Yep.
So now Donovan has the book, and he notices that there are pages missing. And Elsa knows about the map. She said there was a map in here that showed the route from the city to the canyon of the crescent moon. And Indy refuses to tell her where the pages are, and she knows immediately, oh, they're with Marcus Brody.
He sticks out like a sore thumb. We'll find him.
The hell you will. He's got a 2-day head start on you, which is more than he needs.
Brody's got friends in every town and village from here to the Sudan. He speaks a dozen languages, knows every local custom. He'll blend in, disappear. You'll never see him again. With any luck, he's got the Grail already.
And I'm like, dang, I didn't know this about Marcus. I'm excited to see what happens to Marcus.
That's where I cut approach into ordeal before we cut to Marcus not being who we just described him. So that's where I drew the line between approach and ordeal, because I think that originally, so I'll just say it, originally I had him going into Berlin to get the book back from Elsa as the ordeal. But as I looked at Marcus's abduction and the Joneses' escape from the castle, those two things fit better into ordeal for me than they did into approach.
I continue the approach to Iskender in Turkey where, I mean, right after he speaks a dozen languages, blend in, disappear, you'll never see him again. Cut to Marcus.
Does anyone here speak English? Or even ancient Greek? Water, no, thank you, sir. Fish make love in it. I'm going to say thank you so much.
It's such a great cut. Sala luckily finds him.
Hold on. There. Before you go on, there's 2 lines. I've watched this movie, like I said. There's 2 lines that when I turned on the captions that I'd never heard before.
Me too. The fish,
which is someone offers him water. Oh, water, no, thank you, sir. Fish make love in it.
Fish make love in it. I've never heard that line before in my life.
And then a woman holds up a chicken, and he says, "No, thank you, ma'am. I'm a vegetarian." Oh, I love this movie so much.
Yeah, I had that moment too. So Sala finds Brody, and as they are about to make their way out, they are confronted by 2 German agents. Sala starts a fist fight with them so that Brody can run. He escorts Brody to what looks like a shop front, and Brody goes inside, but it's actually sort of similar to what happened in Return of the Jedi, Raiders of the Lost Ark, but backwards when they hide in a shop. This one is actually a truck with a facade in front of it, and they lift the ramp, drive away, and Sala sees the Nazi symbol emblazoned on the back of this freight truck, and he's like, oh, I just got Brody abducted by the Nazis. We cut back to the castle of Brunwald. This is why I still think this is Approach to the Inmost Cave, because we haven't left the castle yet, Indy and Henry. So Donovan tells Elsa, take the diary to the Rijksmuseum in Berlin. Without the map, it's no better than a souvenir.
Yeah.
Vogel then says, let me kill the Joneses. And Elsa says no, because if we fail to recover the map from Brody, we'll need them alive. So the trio exits, leaving the Joneses tied back to back in these 2 wooden chairs. Here is why I've got the escape from the castle still in Approach to the Inmost Cave. Vogler talks about an element of the Approach to the Inmost Cave being the raising of stakes. So they have now lost control of the diary. Mm-hmm. And as Walter Donovan is leaving the castle of Brunwald, a Nazi soldier hands him a cable, and he reads it to Colonel Vogel, who is standing outside the car.
Well, we have Marcus Brody. More important, we have the map.
Aus Berlin, mein Herr.
By the personal command of the Führer, secrecy essential to success, eliminate the American conspirators. Germany has declared war on the Jones boys.
Colonel Vogel is excited. He gets to go back into the castle and murder the Joneses. So higher stakes right there. Amid this, now we get another really funny escape scene where Henry and Indy are back to back. This whole scene is played for comedy.
Yeah.
Henry reaches into Indy's pocket, finds a cigarette lighter, tries to burn the ropes, but it burns him and he drops the lighter. And then he's trying to blow the fire out, but he just makes it worse. And it just, the whole room begins to immolate. They scoot their chairs into the fireplace.
Everything is on fire except the fireplace.
The fireplace, yeah.
So they're in this fireplace. The whole room's on fire, and the only safe place is the fireplace. Absolutely kills me. Spielberg understands comedy, and this film is one of his best funny, in terms of his funny parts, the timing and the dance of it.
Yeah. Henry and Indy then end up escaping the castle on the motorcycle with Henry in the sidecar. Using creativity, Indy defeats the 4 motorcycles soldiers that are chasing them. That, for me, was the end of the Approach to the Inmost Cave.
I think you're correct.
Which brings us to the ordeal. The hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome their worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. The 4 motorcycle soldiers have been defeated. Indy, with Henry in the sidecar, are buzzing down the dirt road, and Indy is about to go the wrong direction. Henry stops him. He says, we have to go to Berlin to get the Grail Diary.
We don't need the diary, Dad. Marcus has the map. There is more in the diary than just the map.
And Indy says, half the German army is on our tail, and you want me to go to Berlin into the Lion's Den?
Ding, 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 ding.
AKA the Dragon's Lair.
The Inmost Cave.
Right. Henry sets the stage here.
The quest for the Grail is not archaeology. It's a race against evil. If it is captured by the Nazis, the armies of darkness will march all over the face of the earth.
Henry convinces Indy to go to Berlin, into the Lion's Den, to pursue the diary.
I think that's the death there. It's the death of Indiana's ego. He's been holding his father hostage in his mind for this obsession. He's never understood it. And in this moment, he gives up going to find his friend and accepts his father's mythological explanation for why saving the Grail is important.
Yeah.
He steps outside of his own personal quest, which was to rescue his dad, and now he wants to rescue Marcus. And he says, okay, now I'm going to stop doing for me and I'm going to do for the community. This is Campbell talks about the hero for himself and then stepping outside of himself and acting as responsible for the community and then eventually for the world when he returns to the ordinary world. This is the death of that ego as he steps out of his own personal interests and into, I guess I'm saving people from Nazis. I'm saving the world from evil.
So Indy and Henry go to Berlin. Indy puts on the uniform of a German colonel at this Nazi parade. And we have a meeting with the goddess moment here. As Germans are throwing books on a burning pyre, we see Elsa. She looks stricken, tears in her eyes. She doesn't like what's going on. She doesn't agree with this aspect of Nazi ideology. Indy finds Elsa, retrieves the Grail from her when she says, "You came all the way back to Berlin just for the diary?" And Indy says, "I didn't want it incinerated." And Elsa said, "Is that all? Is that what you think of me? I believe in the Grail, not the swastika." And Indy says, "You stood up to be counted with the enemies of all that the Grail stands for. Who gives a damn what you think?" And she says, "You do." Indiana Jones turns around and grabs this woman by the throat and says, "All I have to do is squeeze." And here's where the meeting with the goddess moment is. Elsa says, "All I have to do is scream." In The Hero with a Thousand Faces, Campbell says, "The meeting with the goddess is the final test of the talent of the hero to win the boon of love." Now, I don't know that love quite so much is at play here, but there's definitely a huge mutual attraction between the two of them because Indy does not squeeze and Elsa does not scream. She lets him go with the diary.
That pays off, too. You're right.
Yes.
That's a great... Wow, I'd forgotten that part of Campbell. What a great find, Dan.
We now have a little bit of an atonement with the father moment as Indy is trying to get out of there now. He gets swept up in the movement of the parade and bumps into Adolf Mother-Grabbing Hitler himself with the book in his hand, standing next to this pyre of burning books, and we think, oh no, Hitler's going to grab it and toss it into the fire. But nope, he takes a pencil and he autographs the Grail Diary and hands it back to Indiana Jones.
Unbelievable.
My goodness. Now we have a second atonement with the father that partially shares ultimate boon territory.
Why don't you let me tell that scene and then you can tell me why it's part of the atonement with the father.
Okay, there's something about the Zeppelin scene that you really want to talk about. So I think their discussion on the Zeppelin is the end of the ordeal. So, but it's also the reward, which is your segment. So you go ahead and then I'll chime in.
Reward. The ultimate boon. Having faced their worst fear, the hero seizes the object of their quest. The object here is the Grail Diary. That's what they seized. They got the diary back. That's the big boon. And with it, they gain an advantage over Donovan and the Nazis in finding the Grail because they know now the clues to the 3 challenges.
Yes.
I think what you were about to mention as part of Atonement with the Father, to me, is a campfire scene, which is part of reward. In addition to gaining the diary back, Indiana, in sacrificing his ego and letting his goals be subverted by his father's, he and his dad achieve a new level of understanding, even intimacy. This is all revealed during what I think qualifies as a campfire scene, even though it's packed in with elements of the road back. This is my favorite scene, not just in this movie, but I think in the entire Indiana Jones series. 2 excellent actors playing rich characters expressed in truly great dialogue. And I hope when you edit this, you just include the whole exchange. So they're sitting across from each other in this airship, and Henry says to Indy,
"You know, sharing your adventures is an interesting experience."
It's not always shared. It's disgraceful. You're old enough to be her grandfather.
I'm as human as the next man.
I was the next man.
So they get that all out of the way, right?
That's a great exchange, yeah.
But the key of the scene is when he says,
"Do you remember the last time we had a quiet drink? Huh? I had a milkshake."
What did we talk about?
We didn't talk. We never talked.
Do I detect a rebuke?
A regret. It was just the two of us, Dad. It was a lonely way to grow up. For you, too. If you'd been an ordinary average father like the other guys' dads, you'd have understood that.
Actually, I was a wonderful father.
When?
Did I ever tell you to eat up, go to bed, wash your ears, do your homework? No, I respected your privacy, and I taught you self-reliance.
What you taught me was that I was less important to you than people who'd been dead for 500 years in another country. And I learned it so well that we've hardly spoken for 20 years.
You left just when you were becoming interesting.
Dad,
how can... Huh, I'm here now. What do you want to talk about?
I can't think of anything.
Then what are you complaining about? Like we have work to do.
And they open the Grail Diary, and the way that they bond, as so many fathers and sons do, is about business, tasks to be completed.
Mm-hmm.
Their relationship moves on from the, okay, we've acknowledged there's something uncomfortable between us. We've acknowledged that it's been a long time. Now we're together. We're on a team. Let's get to work.
Yep.
And they talk about the 3 challenges they'll face, and that ties into the reward, too, because this is new information, right? New perceptions, new knowledge.
Exactly.
That's what I had as reward, and we've skipped a couple elements that to me are rode back. I look for campfire scenes, and that's as close to one as we get. In the storytelling framework, or rather in the pacing of a screenplay, it's a breath, right? It's a quiet moment.
Yes.
Where the heroes can celebrate, have a drink, collect themselves for the next part of the journey.
Yeah. I agree with you that conversation between Henry and Indy is a part of the reward, but I also saw it as a second atonement with the father. Literally, Indy atoning with his father, confronting him about his absenteeism and how they haven't spoken in 20 years because of it. And
I can see that, yeah.
But also a reward, because having that opportunity and having it not result in a confrontation, but cooperation instead, is also a reward.
Yeah.
All right. That concludes Act 2 of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, as Indy and Henry sit in this luxury Zeppelin lobby. It's incredible. I would love to travel like this. What an amazing experience that would be. Having a drink together, a quiet drink. I think it is time for you and I to travel to the Vogler Lounge and have our own themed beverage. I will see you there.
Dan.
Jeff.
Welcome to the Vogler Lounge. You know, the last time we had a quiet drink, I think I had a glass of whiskey, and you were having no, we were at the wine place, right? We were at the
last time we actually in person had a drink. Yeah, we were at the wine bar.
Yeah. Drinking
down
wine.
The street from Studio Z. One of my favorite haunts.
Well, Dan, I can't wait to see your themed beverage from this.
Okay, well, but before we reveal our themed beverages for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, we have a new patron that I would like to welcome, known only as Rich. All these one-named patrons need to start a band. So thank you, Rich, for joining the Hero's Journey podcast as a patron.
Thank you.
If you would like to do the same, you can go to patreon.com/Hero's Journey podcast if you are interested also in supporting the podcast. So thank you, Rich. We really appreciate your support. And now, am I revealing my beverage first?
I mean, you're driving the airship. You tell me. You want to be the last?
I don't think I should be driving the airship if I'm about to have an alcoholic beverage. Do not operate heavy machinery.
Do they have Uber for airships? I have
a classic cocktail that I think is very appropriate. This is a sidecar.
Aw, yes. God, creative thoughts.
Made with 2 ounces of cognac.
Ooh.
3/4 ounce of lemon juice. I actually have a lemon that I juiced. I did not buy bottled lemon juice from...
3/4 ounce? That's going to be tangy.
3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice and 3/4 of an ounce of triple sec. Put all your ingredients into a cocktail shaker with ice. Shake well, strain into a cocktail glass, and enjoy. So I will hold up to the camera. Here is my...
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's got kind of a muddy orange color to it.
Looks like an IPA, like a hazy IPA almost.
A bit, yeah. It does look like a hazy IPA. Let's see how it smells. I really expected a lot of lemony, and because the triple sec is an orange liqueur, and the lemon juice, I expected a lot of citrus on the nose, but there really isn't. And I'm wondering if, because you've got 2 ounces of cognac and only 1.5 ounces of the two citrusy things, that maybe that overpowers. It smells really fresh, though. I feel like whenever I have an old fashioned, that's kind of my standard go-to cocktail. If I'm at a bar, I'll just get an old fashioned because it's easy. I feel like those kind of have a powerful scent, I think, because the whiskey is so strong. But the cognac here is really smooth. Also, oops, I forgot to show you. Oh, I'll taste it first, and then I'll show you what I was going to show you. Whoa. Get you here. Get you right here.
Oh, yeah.
That lemon juice, that 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice. Wow.
Dan was pointing to the bottom of his mouth where where your tongue salivary glands are.
Your nodes and your neck.
It activated your immune system.
So
you taste the lemon if you don't smell it, huh?
Yeah. It's sweet, though, too, because the triple sec is an orange liqueur. So there's some sweetness there. And I think it's really well balanced. That's a nice cocktail. So the thing I was going to show you, picture, if you will, the symbol of the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword.
Got it.
Here is the cognac I found. It's called Douce from France.
No way.
I mean,
way.
There's one element missing, but basically the logo is the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword symbol.
Wow.
How awesome is that, huh?
I went literal and I thought, well, this is about the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail holds the blood of Christ, which he transmuted into wine, or wine into blood. I'm not really sure how the whole thing works. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get a wine. And I thought, this happens in Italy, in Venice, so I'll go to the Italian wine section. I've never been more intimidated in my life than by the Italian wine section. I didn't understand anything on any of the labels. There were no like fancy fun labels or cute names. It was just like, here are 7 Italian words that even if you spoke Italian, you probably wouldn't understand because you don't understand wine.
And they were probably all actual grape varietals, but you'd never heard of them before because they're only grown on that 1/2 acre.
Yeah, right.
In the foothills of the Alps.
So
nowhere else in the world.
I was like, I'm probably not ready in my journey drinking wine to tackle this aisle yet without significant research. So I looked at every bottle of wine at the store, every bottle of wine. And I found a Malbec from Argentina. It's from the Bodega Bianchi, which is at 3,900 feet in the mountains above the fog line. I read all about this winery and the way they do stuff, and I won't go into it, but it's near a river, so the soil is alluvial, and it's got like a mineral quality that makes it brighter. And anyway, it's called Elsa Bianchi.
Oh, nice. Elsa. Perfect.
For Elsa. And this is how they describe it. Attractive, deep purple color, typical of young Malbec wines. Aromas of ripe red fruit predominate with floral touches of violets, intense, aromatic, and fruit-forward, accompanied by a subtle minerality that adds further liveliness. That minerality is from the alluvial soil. On the palate, there is a sweet entry, round and soft tannins, balanced acidity, and medium structure with an elegant mouthfeel. So let's see if I agree with
But do
all
not
that.
fall in love because we'll betray you at your first opportunity.
Also picks wrong cups. Okay, here we go.
On purpose. We'll get there.
Yep, I smell the fruit right away. Smells like grape juice, to be honest with you. It doesn't smell like cherries or blackberries.
Grape juice, or does it smell like jam? Like a jammy?
Smells like I just opened a bottle of Welch's grape juice from the supermarket.
Okay.
But there's something maybe earthy in there too.
Something earthy?
Yeah. Maybe that's that minerality, maybe.
Yeah, could be.
All right, here we go.
Taking a sip.
Uh-oh. I did not like the first sip of that. I forgot to hold it up to the light. It's almost opaque. I opened it after Act 1, so it's been open. The bottle's been open for about 30 minutes. I usually like Malbecs, but this is...
You need to mix it with some Diet Coke, I think.
I hope this gets better. It's like aggressively fruity, but not in a sweet way. All right, I hope that gets better. I'm not enjoying this very much, but let's see how I feel when I finish more than half the glass, because that's usually when I really start to enjoy wine.
Before we do anything else, we're talking about dads, so I want us to raise our glasses.
Oh, yeah.
To Mike and Roger, our fathers, who were better dads than Henry.
Yes, for sure. You left just when you were starting to become interesting.
I love that line. Oh. You left just when you were becoming interesting.
I relate deeply to children becoming interesting. So here's to Mike and Roger.
Thank you, dads around the world, for...
And to those who don't have dads, or who have father figures instead, or moms who just had to do both roles, here's to you too. Blah.
I am so sorry you're not enjoying that wine. Hopefully it will open up. Keep swishing it.
I didn't do any of the stuff you're supposed to do. Oh, I almost swished it right out of the glass.
Well, that's why the wine's not good.
Yeah.
You need to watch Sideways again. We'll see you back at the studio. Let's go. Act 3 of the hero's journey begins with The Road Back. Also known as, in Campbell's opus, The Magic Flight.
You don't say.
And I think that is a very appropriate term here.
More than any movie we've done in a long time, this nails the Magic Flight.
The hero is pursued by vengeful forces disturbed when they seized the object of their quest. As Campbell discussed, in Magic Flight terms, if the hero had permission to seize the treasure from the dragon's lair, they are allowed to walk out scot-free. However, if they snuck in and stole the treasure, they are pursued by angry
Nazis.
Yes. As dad and son are enjoying their whiskey, Indy realizes that the Zeppelin is turning around because he sees the shadow of the flower vase on the table.
Yes.
Spinning like a sundial. And he says, they're taking us back to Germany. So he and Henry immediately jump up. They run through the belly of the service area of the Zeppelin and find a biplane that has been attached to the bottom of the Zeppelin.
Yes.
This is something that was actually attempted with the Hindenburg, but the pilot of the biplane couldn't reliably and repeatedly attach to the Zeppelin, so they scrapped the plan. But for this film, movie magic, they decided to make it happen. So the Jones boys get into the biplane. It is a 2-seater, of course, with a machine gun on the back. Henry gets in the back. Indy gets in the front.
I didn't know you could fly a plane.
Why, yes! Land? No!
They detach from the Zeppelin, fly away, immediately are attacked by 2 German fighter planes, and again, played for comedy. This is a really wonderful scene. I love this scene. Indy says, Dad, 11 o'clock. And Henry pulls out his watch, checks it, and says, what happens at 11 o'clock?
Somehow he's made it to his 60s without understanding.
11 o'clock. Okay, so finally Henry understands. He starts shooting at the plane. The German fighter passes behind, and Henry blows off their own tail. Sean, I'm sorry, they got us.
I did this once in GTA, where I was firing a machine gun out the side of a helicopter, and I blew off part of our helicopter and blamed it on the enemy.
Oh, hysterical. I love Henry. Henry is such a wonderful addition to this series.
Absolutely the best.
Because James Bond would never have made that mistake. So the biplane is forced to make a crash landing. There's just some really great father-son moments here. They jump into a ditch as one of the German planes comes shooting at them with machine guns.
Those people are trying to kill us. I know, Dad! It's a new experience for me. It happens to me all the time.
And so then they steal some dude's car, and they're driving along, and there's a plane. It's just such a great sequence of events. It's fast paced.
Yeah.
Still played for comedy because, they drive into the tunnel and one of the fighter planes follows them into the tunnel, shears its wings off, and just the cockpit part goes rocketing past their car, and they're all like looking at each other.
And the driver, is looking at the pilot's looking at him.
And the pilot like looks at them as he goes by, and then it exits the tunnel first and explodes. The car with Indy and Henry in it smashes through the wreckage, and Henry says, well, they don't come any closer than that. And then cut to immediately the other plane drops a bomb right in front of them. They crash into the crater. It's such a fast, it's like boom, boom, boom. Spielberg is not wasting any time. It's an exciting sequence. It's funny. There's great father-son moments. Okay, so now their car has been wrecked. They have to attempt to flee on foot. They scramble down a hillside. They're on a beach. The second German fighter plane seems to have them in their sights. They're done. Indy pulls out his revolver. There's no bullets in it. Henry to the rescue. He grabs his umbrella and starts chasing the seagulls with it. They all fly up into the air, smash into the German fighter plane, bird strike. I mean, I always wonder, like, how the heck, like, one bird can bring down an entire plane? But geez, I mean,
a flock of them.
It happens.
Yeah,
it happens. I mean, that's what happened with if you know the story of Sully Sullenberger. That was one bird. Anyway, so that German fighter plane crashes into the hillside. They are now relieved of pursuit for the moment, and I really enjoy Henry, his line at the end. He says,
I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne. Let my armies be the rocks and the trees and the birds in the sky.
And he looks so pleased with himself, and Indy is like, wow, my dad actually did something.
Yeah.
He actually saved us.
The professor of medieval literature remembered his medieval literature.
Right. The guy who has scolded Indy for all of the violence that Indy has been doing.
Now murdered dozens of birds and a human being.
Henry is now, he's starting to see the point. Like, sometimes violence is necessary.
He's crossed his threshold.
Now we cut to the province of Hatay. I'm sorry, they called it the Republic of Hatay, but it's currently a province of Turkey. Walter Donovan and Elsa and Colonel Vogel are presenting the Sultan with a chest full of gold and precious valuables in exchange for being able to traverse the Sultan's territory and find the Grail, which lies within it. And the Sultan's not interested.
Yeah.
But he has read Car and Driver magazine and knows all the details about the Rolls-Royce Phantom 2.
4.3 liter, 30 horsepower, 6-cylinder engine with Stromberg downdraft carburetor can go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 12.5 seconds. And I even like the color.
The keys are in the ignition, Your Highness.
And so Donovan agrees to exchange the car for permission. And the Sultan, it's so great. He says,
you shall have camels, horses, an armed escort, provisions, desert vehicles, and tanks.
You're welcome.
Does he say tanks or thanks?
You're welcome.
We don't know. But Donovan says, you're welcome. And then it is revealed very shortly afterward that it is a literal tank that that the Sultan has given the Germans for their expedition across the desert. It's a great reveal.
Yeah. Love it.
While this is happening, now the Joneses have made it to Eskenderun, met up with Sala, who has informed Indy and Henry that the Germans has set out across the desert with this convoy, taking Brody with them, and Henry laments that the Germans now have the map, because Brody had the map. So they have Brody has the map, Germans have the map.
Yeah.
Indy, Henry, Sala conduct a recon of the German expedition. Indy reverts to his argumentative teenager when he's like, oh, they've got a tank. He's looking through binoculars. They have a tank. And Henry says, Junior, get down.
Dad, we're well out of range.
That car belonged to my brother-in-law.
Come on!
Then the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword appeared out of nowhere and ambushed the German convoy. Henry's like, well, now who are all of these people? Okay, so now we've got a big battle sequence where the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword, it's a three-pronged action scene.
Chaos now.
The Brotherhood is attacking the Germans. The Germans are fighting back at the Brotherhood. Donovan says, yep, that's Jones all right. He thinks Indiana Jones is involved with this.
Right.
During the confusion, Indy wants to go steal the expedition's horses. Sala wants to go steal the expedition's camels. Henry uses the confusion to get into the tank to try to rescue Brody.
Oh,
but Germans
Henry.
climb down inside. Vogel starts smacking Henry with his glove, asking him questions. Without the map, the diary is useless, and yet you came all the way back to Berlin to get it. Why? What does the diary tell you that it doesn't tell us? Every sentence, slap, 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 just beating Henry with this glove. Henry's finally had enough. He grabs Vogel's hand and he says,
It tells me that goose-stepping morons like yourself should try reading books instead of burning them.
Donovan now alerts Colonel Vogel of Indy's theft of their horse. He says Jones is getting away, but Vogel has Jones Sr. I think not. Hey, Donovan, not that Jones, the other one. And Indy goes sprinting past the tank with all the horses in tow.
Yeah.
So now Vogel closes the hatch on the tank. Another chase begins.
Number 5.
So Sala then tells Indy that Henry and Brody both are now captive inside the belly of that steel beast. Now the tank catches up with Indy on his horse. Indy manages to thin the herd, as it were, by trickery and getting the Germans to shoot each other and this kind of thing. Indy manages to get Brody and Henry off the tank with the help of Sala, who has appeared on horseback. The tank, though, with Vogel and Indy still aboard, goes off the side of a cliff. I seemed to remember that Vogler in The Writer's Journey talks about a second ordeal, and I could not find anything about it. I know I've read that before, and I thought, okay, here's the second ordeal. It's a delayed crisis. The hero appears to die. So ordeal element, but it's deep, deep, deep into the road back. As Brody and Sala and Henry look over the side of the cliff, Henry says,
I've lost him. And I never told him anything. I just wasn't ready, Marcus. 5 minutes would have been enough.
And Indy climbs up the side of the cliff, joins them looking over the side. Henry sees him, hugs him, says, I thought I'd lost you, boy, but then is immediately back to business. All right, let's go. We've got to continue our journey here. Indy's hat, which has blown off at some point during this chase, the wind blows it right to his feet. Time to go back to work. That is where the road back ends.
That brings us to resurrection. The hero faces death one more time in an ordeal, battle, or showdown. This time, the danger is on the broadest scale of the entire story. The boys arrive at the temple. They're peeking out from their hiding place, and they watch as a volunteer enters the temple. And we see a point of view that they can't see, but the volunteer enters, and it's this thick cobwebs in the dark entryway, and then the cobwebs part as we see and almost feel the breath of God, and then frump, his head comes flying off, tumbles
Frump.
out the doorway.
That is the sound of decapitation. Frump.
And rolls right out into view of everyone. And of course, they're horrified. And they call for another volunteer, and that's when Marcus turns around and realizes that they've been ambushed by Nazis. So the Nazis force our party toward the opening where Donovan greets them. And Donovan says, you're going to Indy, you're going to go retrieve the Grail for me. And Indy refuses and says, what? And Donovan pulls the gun and he says, what are you shooting me is not going to do you any good. And Donovan says, you're right. And then he turns and he shoots Henry. This is the hero facing death, right? The death of his father. The whole point of this movie to now is to find his father and save him, and now he's dying. So now, of course, he has to go retrieve the Grail, because as Donovan says, the only thing that can save your father now is the healing power of the Grail. Indy walks into the temple. The first challenge. He knows about this because his father and he discussed it.
When we get to Alexandretta, we will face 3 challenges. First, the breath of God. Only the penitent man will pass.
So he's walking into this temple and he's mumbling, the penitent man, the penitent man. And we cut back to Henry, and Henry's saying, penitent, penitent. He's trying to channel to Indy. Don't forget, these are the clues. This is what you have to do. We see that gust of wind blow the cobwebs apart, and we know Indy's about to lose his head. And then he says, the penitent man kneels before God, is humble before God, kneels before God, kneel. And he kneels just in time for the blade to miss his head. And then the penitent man also does a roll-a-dope before God. And so Indy does that to avoid the second blade. And then he throws a rope that he finds somewhere around the cogs that are spinning the blade. So he stops the mechanism so that others may pass, or so he can get back. So the next challenge is the word of God. And Indy has to hopscotch across this very thin floor. He figures out that the name of God would be Jehovah, and he remembers after he steps on the J and it cracks open beneath his feet but in Latin, Jehovah begins with an I. And of course, Henry is almost scolding Indiana, knowing that he's going to screw this up. Like, it begins with an I.
Props to the editor who cuts back and forth between these two of Henry anticipating what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And Indy like doing the screw up that Henry just anticipated.
I also love this because during the prologue, Henry makes Indy count in Greek or Latin. I don't remember. Greek. So, and he's very annoyed, like, okay, I'll count. But you can tell now that the education that Henry insisted he have is saving his life now.
Yes.
But the long and short of it is that spelling counts, kids. Stay in school.
Right.
So he makes it across, and then he emerges into a massive chasm.
Third, the path of God. Only in the leap from the lion's head will he prove his worth.
What does that mean?
I don't know. We'll find out.
But there's no visible path, and it's way too far to jump. And that's when Indy realizes it's a leap of faith. And you cut to Henry saying, you must believe, boy, you must believe.
Right.
Here's that faith moment again. And
yes.
In a great performance by Harrison Ford, he puts his hand over his heart, he closes his eyes, and he takes that first step, and his foot finds solid ground. And in my favorite effect shot in the movie, where we see him from almost overhead, it looks like he's standing on nothing, and then the camera shifts, and you realize that there's this strip, this thin bridge of rock that's perfectly made in perspective to look like it's part of the descending cliff face. But when the camera moves, you realize it's... So he makes his way across.
It's a really neat visual trick.
It's so cool. He makes his way across, and then in order to make the path even more slippery and treacherous, he grabs some gravel and tosses it out onto the path. I mean, to mark it so he can find his way back or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
So he's made it past the 3 challenges, and he emerges into this chamber, and he comes across the knight. This is the first knight, the knight that stayed to guard the Grail. He's been there for 700 years. And he turns around and he sees Indy, and he picks up his sword and tries to swing it and falls backward because he's 700. So there's the comedy moment.
And I like how the knight is dressed and lit so that he looks like he's in black and white.
Yeah, except for the red cruciform on his chest is the only real visible bit of color. But he looks like he's in black and white. It's really great practical effect. They must have covered him in dust or something. So after realizing that he can't fight him, he essentially acknowledges that Indy is the new knight, even though he's dressed strangely for a knight, and tries to give him the sword.
Yeah.
But as that's happening, Donovan and Elsa walk into the chamber. And Donovan is just, his eyes are dollar signs. And he sees all this treasure, and he says, which one is it?
You must choose. But choose wisely. For as the true Grail will bring you life, the false Grail will take it from you.
And Donovan doesn't know which to pick because he's a dilettante. He's a collector.
He's not educated in these matters. He's just treasure hunting.
Yeah, he wants to own things. And so Elsa says, let me choose for you. And she finds the most ornate, beautiful gold cup and hands it to him. And I think even at this point, we realize she gives Indy a look. She's doing this on purpose. She is.
Yes.
She's handing Donovan the wrong cup.
Yes, there's a very brief blink and you'll miss it moment where Donovan has the cup in his hands and he's turning around to face the camera. And you see under his elbow, Elsa in the background. She looks over at Indy and subtly shakes her head.
So Donovan holds the cup, reverently says, "This is certainly the cup of the King of Kings." And there's a bird bath in the chamber, and he dips the cup into the bird bath where the fish make love.
Oh, come on.
And he drinks the water, and in an almost echo of melting Nazi guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark, instead of melting, he ages rapidly. So Donovan turns around and he's aged 20 years.
Decomposed instantly.
Yeah, and then he's decomposing and his hair's growing and he's just screaming and Elsa's screaming. And then he falls to bones and turns to dust and blows away. And in another great comedy moment, the knight looks at them and says,
"You chose poorly."
Another line that I quote weekly.
Weekly.
Now, Indy looks at the cups and immediately locates the most humble-looking wooden cup and says, "This is the cup of a carpenter." Because he understands not the myth of Jesus, but the reality of him, right? So he takes the cup and he dips it in the bird bath and he drinks it. Nothing bad happens. And the knight says, "You've chosen wisely. But the Grail cannot pass beyond the Great Seal. That is the boundary and the price of immortality."
Important clue.
Indy rushes back to his father, pours some into Henry's mouth, pours some on his belly where the bullet wound is, and it heals the bullet wound instantly. So he sort of slowly becomes coherent, and he looks at Indy and realizes Indy's holding the Grail, this thing he's quested for his whole life. And he kind of takes it and he puts it on his chest and looks at it. He's just marveling at it for a moment, like, this is the thing. This is the thing itself. And it's almost an anticlimax in the way he's responding to it. He's just like, I don't know, he's stunned, like, here, this is the thing. Like, I never thought I would actually, but here it is in my hands.
It's almost, I could almost hear him saying, "Huh, interesting."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like it's immediately academic. It immediately goes out of the realm of fantasy and into analysis.
Now it's a tangible thing.
Elsa sees the Grail there on the ground where it's been left and walks up to it and takes it. "We've got it. Come on." And she starts to sort of back her way out of the chamber, and Indy warns her, "Don't take it past the seal," but she steps past it and the ground starts to shake and there's dust falling down and it's an earthquake, Wrath of God type stuff.
Yep.
A big crack runs through the chamber and the Grail tumbles in, and then Elsa tumbles in and Indy barely catches her. He says, "Give me your hand, give me your other hand," but she looks down and the Grail is just feet below her. She can almost reach it. And he says, "Give me your hand, let it go," but she slips out of his grip and goes careening into the chasm to her death. And then Indy slides in, and it's Henry who has him by the hand. And Indy looks down, and he can almost touch it. His finger is on the cup.
Junior, give me your other hand. I can't hold on.
I can get it. I can almost reach it, Dad.
Indiana.
The first time he's called his son Indiana.
Let it go.
And he pulls him up, and they're heading out. They've made it out of the crack, and they're heading out of the temple, and they turn back. Temple's falling apart, ceiling's crumbling, and they see the knight standing in the doorway, and he raises his hand in salute. And then they make their way out. That's the end of Resurrection.
Just wrecking this guy's home. They just come in, just demolish
absolutely.
the place.
Americans, man. Just ruin everything
and
they touch.
then leave. And this guy's left to... I mean, he can't fix the place. He's just got to live in a destroyed temple now.
Well, he doesn't have the cup, so he won't be able to live much longer. Because
That's true. That's true.
He's got no bathwater of life to drink, so...
That is a very important thing to note, because a lot of people at the end of this film said, well, are Indy and Henry immortal now because they drank from the Holy Grail?
No, because they can't keep drinking, and they've moved beyond the seal, and that's the boundary.
Right. You have to continually drink from it to maintain its power. It's not you drink once from it and suddenly you're immortal forever. This brings us to the return with the elixir, or the freedom to live. The hero, having won some precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. The enemy has been vanquished. The Holy Grail has now been lost again. Henry, Indy, Marcus, Sala escape the temple, and Henry says Elsa never really believed in the Grail. She thought she'd found a prize. And Indy says, well, what did you find, Dad? And Henry says, calling back to the prologue, illumination. He is totally okay with this experience. The thing that he's been looking for his entire life. He has experienced it, and the experience is now over. This is what he needed out of it.
Yeah.
He can now move on, really. This is his freedom to live. He doesn't have to obsess over the Holy Grail anymore. He knows he's seen it, he's touched it, he's drunk from it.
Drunkened did.
And this closes Henry's story. And then, again, we're still playing for comedy. The movie's not over yet, so we're still playing for comedy. We find out the origin of Indy's name.
And what did you find, Junior?
Junior? Dad?
Please, what does it always mean? This Junior? That's his name. Henry Jones Jr.
Like Indiana.
We named the dog Indiana.
May we go home now, please?
The dog? You are named after the dog?
Got a lot of fond memories of that dog.
And then they mount horses and ride off literally into the sunset.
Spielberg can get away with that because he's Spielberg.
End of movie film.
My favorite Indiana Jones movies and one of my favorite movies of all time. Love it. Very quotable. Very memorable. Loved watching it again.
Yes. This almost made me want to watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull again.
Well, I will definitely watch it again
in
before.
advance of Dial of Destiny. Yeah, just to refresh my memory. It's the only Indiana Jones movie I've only seen once.
Yep, me too.
I've seen all the other ones many times.
Yes. Except the alien one.
Listeners and patrons and dads, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share us with your friends and family. Even if you didn't, still share us with your friends and family. Maybe they'll like it.
Like and subscribe, rate and review on your favorite podcast app if it supports that function. If you would like to support the podcast monetarily and receive the ultimate boon of bonus content, please go to patreon.com/Heroes Journey Podcast.
Thank you to all patrons who make the show possible, including our demigod tier patrons: John Peterson Jr., Scott Sanford, Ricky Garvin, Jeff Scott, Joseph Wilbur, Michelle Calderon, Ami Garvin, Salathiel Jones, Jasmine and Pete Hudson, Mike and Susie Zarzana, and Randy Sparks.
Special thanks to our friends Taylor Jordan for composing our theme music, and thank you to Jason Dorff for our episode artwork. Links to their portfolios can be found on the About page at heroesjourneypodcast.com. The trademark Hero's Journey is used under license from the Joseph Campbell Foundation. Visit www.jcf.org to learn about how the foundation promotes and celebrates the work of Joseph Campbell.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is copyright 1989, Lucasfilm Limited. I expected it to be Paramount. I was surprised when I saw that. Thanks again for listening. Until next time,
journey on. I watched this film with the whole family. Some of the movies we cover are not appropriate, though I wanted to show them The Shining so they could understand what it's like to try and be a dad and a writer. I felt that it was inappropriate at this age. But I showed them this movie, and my daughter did not want to watch this because my dad, I love my dad, he showed them Temple of Doom when they were like 4 and 7. And my daughter hated it and hates Indiana Jones. And so it was lovely. It was lovely to watch her like enjoy that part, you know.
Oh, that is funny. God, when did the Temple of Doom come out? That was 84.
Yeah.
So
we were 8.
7. It probably came out summer of 84. So I would have been 7. I remember my mom took me to see it, and we were driving home. And she kept reaching across and like grabbing my chest, going, Kalima! And I was screaming like, ah!
Oh, Susie.
Oh.
I love that she tortured you. That's the Susie I know.
And I know she and my dad listen to this, so she will probably say that never happened. But I remember, Mom. I remember. Okay, so...
I'm going to get a text message when this happens.
Oh, yeah, you're going to get the text message? I'm going to get the phone call.